On the edge of a sleepy village, nestled deep in the woods, there stood an abandoned house. No one dared to go near it, not even the bravest children, for it was said to be cursed. Legends swirled about the house and its former owner, an old woman who dabbled in dark magic before mysteriously disappearing. But the most chilling part of the tale was the black cat that still wandered the grounds. The villagers called him Midnight. Midnight was no ordinary cat. His fur was as dark as a starless sky, and his eyes, pale yellow, glowing with an unnatural light, seemed to pierce through your very soul. It was whispered that anyone who gazed too long into his eyes would fall under his spell, trapped in a waking nightmare from which there was no escape. When Clara, a headstrong young woman from the village, heard the stories, she scoffed. She didn't believe in curses or magic, and she wasn't afraid of an old cat. One autumn afternoon, driven by curiosity and a desire to prove everyone wrong, she set out toward the abandoned house. The forest grew eerily quiet as she approached. The wind seemed to hold its breath, and even the birds stopped singing. Clara shivered but pressed on. When the house finally came into view, a sense of foreboding crept over her. But she shook it off. The dilapidated building stood crooked and forgotten, overgrown with ivy, its windows dark and hollow like empty eyes. That's when she saw him. Midnight sat on the front steps, his yellow eyes gleaming as they locked onto hers. For a moment Clara felt a strange sensation, as if her thoughts were slipping away, her will dissolving into the cat's glowing gaze. But she quickly looked away, heart pounding, reminding herself that it was just a cat. As she approached the house, Midnight followed her every move. His eyes were unnerving, but Clara refused to back down. She stepped onto the porch, the wood creaking under her weight, and reached for the rusted doorknob. But just as her fingers touched it, a soft, purring voice echoed in her mind. "Come inside, Clara." She froze, her heart skipping a beat. The voice was not her own. She turned and saw Midnight staring up at her, his eyes glowing brighter now. Almost hypnotic. The world around her seemed to blur, and before she could react, darkness enveloped her. When she awoke, Clara was no longer on the porch, but inside the house. The air was thick and oppressive, and a faint, foul stench lingered. Her head felt heavy, her thoughts sluggish. She tried to move, but her limbs wouldn't obey. And then she heard it again, that voice whispering in her mind. "You belong to me now." Panic surged through her. Midnight appeared at the foot of the stairs, his yellow eyes glowing like twin moons in the dark. He padded closer, his gaze never leaving hers, and Clara felt the weight of his spell pressing down on her, pulling her deeper into a nightmare. But something deep within her stirred, a small flicker of resistance. She remembered the stories, the warnings, but also the key detail everyone seemed to forget. Midnight's spell could only work if you let it. The old woman who had cursed him was long gone, but her magic still lived on through the cat, feeding off fear and weakness. Clara's mind raced. She had one chance to escape. Summoning every ounce of strength, she tore her gaze from Midnight's eyes, focusing instead on the flickering candle on the windowsill. The moment their eye contact broke, she felt the weight lift slightly. The cat hissed, sensing his grip loosening. "You cannot leave," the voice roared in her mind, but Clara was done listening. She scrambled to her feet, her heart pounding as Midnight lunged toward her. His claws swiped at her legs, but she dodged, bursting through the door and into the cold night air. The curse weakened as she put distance between herself and the house. Panting and shaking, Clara ran until the village lights came into view. Only when she reached the safety of the village square did she stop, collapsing onto a bench. Her heart still raced, but she was free. Free from Midnight's spell. From the shadows at the edge of the village, two glowing yellow eyes watched her, burning with unearthly rage. Midnight remained bound to the cursed house, but Clara had broken free. She knew the danger was far from over, but she had learned one thing that would save her, and anyone else willing to listen. Never look too long into the eyes of midnight, or you may never escape.